Mr. Minister, what a pleasure to see you at CIIE.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. It's a wonderful show. We've got a huge delegation from New Zealand come out. It shows the importance of our economic relationship with China.
I'm sure you're very busy these days. You have to go from counter to counter in order to be with your colleagues.
Yeah, we're getting around everywhere. We'll do about 15 kilometers of walking to see them all, which means I won't have to go to the gym anymore.
No, not for these days. Having said that, though, China has already exercised the zero tariff or lower tariffs of many of the New Zealand products into this country. Meanwhile, free visa for short-term visitors. How have these measures, in a way, helping New Zealand businesses to seek their opportunities here?
Well, I think it's significant. China is our most important economic relationship, and it's underpinned by the very high-quality free trade agreement we signed in 2008. We've seen our two-way trade go from about $2 billion to almost $40 billion as a result of that agreement. And you're right that for almost everything that we sell to China, it is now without a tariff, and we've reciprocated everything that we are able to buy from China is at a zero tariff rate as well. But the relationship is greater than just the goods that we sell. And I think actually if we look at a lot of areas, tourism as an example, people-to-people links, we expect about 300,000 Chinese visitors come to New Zealand this year. There are now the same or slightly more flights to New Zealand than before the pandemic. And so what we're seeing is that economic relationship grow. But very much for our business community, they have a lot of interest in China. We produce very high quality food that's absolutely safe. It's all grass-fed, and we know that there are 500 million Chinese consumers that are interested in the story behind the food. We've got about 70 companies here this week who are talking about the great things that come from New Zealand and that long-term enduring partnerships they're building with Chinese companies to offer Chinese and New Zealand consumers more choice.
Good to know, Mr. Minister. Having said that, you mentioned the high-quality demands of Chinese consumers these days. This has a lot to do with the high-quality economic development, the structure that has been already blueprinted. How do you see China's economy in this transition, and where is New Zealand in this regard?
Well, look, it's very important to us, and New Zealand businesses have put a lot of effort into the relationship. I think that since the FTA was first signed, the relationship from a business point of view has changed. It's gone from just buying and selling to long-term, dependable relationships. So
tell me more about that.
We have businesses now here in China with New Zealand that have been working together for 10 or 15 years, and they are investing and growing their businesses with a reliance upon each other. And that's a maturing of the relationship, and it's a very good thing to see. But equally, it's the claim that New Zealand have. We are a country that's green. All of our animals are outside all year long. They live on eating grass. They are healthy. And we have some of the highest standards in the world around food safety and the way that our food is treated, so that we can give an absolute assurance to consumers in China that the food we produce is not only high quality, it's safe. The other thing that's very important is the cooperation that we see between the New Zealand and Chinese government in many areas, from sustainable agriculture to improving the environment to climate change. This is my second visit to China this year. My colleague, the climate change minister, has also been here. So there are many areas that our governments decide we want to work together so that our industries, our agriculture in China and New Zealand can meet their obligations and do better.
You are in charge not only of trade, but also agriculture, forestry, fishing, hunting, and the list goes on. First of all, it's amazing that you could be working on all of these areas, which are all key to your economy. But having said that, though, how to create synergy among these different sectors and working with your Chinese partners, how do you approach that?
Well, New Zealand is a trading nation, just like China is. New Zealanders get up every day and go to work to produce things to sell to the world. And there is a lot of similarity here in the Chinese market. But my very first visit to China this year, I've been to China many times, maybe 20, but this year I went to Beijing to meet with my counterparts, the ministers for commerce and trade, for agriculture and forestry. And then I visited Harbin up in the very north, with the heart of agricultural production. to learn and to look for ways that we can work and we can cooperate together. Chinese producers and consumers are very similar to New Zealanders. They're innovative, they want to work hard. But what was very interesting is there's a university in Harbin where Chinese people studying can go to New Zealand to do some of their studies, or New Zealanders come to Harbin and they get a joint degree in agriculture, and so we are cooperating a lot. I think the most important thing though is there is a mutual respect, and so I spent a lot of time with all of my portfolios meeting and getting to know my counterparts here in China and talking about the many things we have in common around the way we want to produce food. We work together in the WTO. It's very important to us that we have a rules-based approach to everything that we do. The way that we can make sure our economies grow, our consumers have choice and our businesses are better off is by having very clear rules that we all stick to. And so, I'm very pleased to work with China on that.
There are concerns about unilateralism. We heard a lot these days in the hall when we talk to people here at CIIE. They're also concerned about tariffs and also out of proportion rhetorics and industrial subsidies.
Well, look, I talk a lot about the WTO and that rules-based approach, and we have many partners we work closely with in the WTO, from China to the European Union to America to Australia, many. That rules-based approach gives us certainty for businesses. When they know what the rules are, they can invest, they can grow, and it takes the risk away from them. The China-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement is one of the best examples of that. To go from a few $1 billion of trade to $40 billion, when you have one of the world's largest economies, and New Zealand with 5 million people, is a demonstration of how business can grow when you have very good, clear rules. And so, look, as there will be headwinds around the world, a reliance upon the WTO, reinforcing it, sticking to those rules, and having good, solid, strong relationships that are mutually respectful is the way we will get through.
You speak at the Hongqiao Forum, the panel discussion on WTO's future and national policies related to it. What is your immediate response when some say, oh, WTO, out of date? We don't rely on it. We just rely on what we decide. What is your response to that?
Well, my immediate response is that they are wrong. The WTO is a very important institution. New Zealand and China and every single member of the WTO has benefited from those clear rules. And it doesn't mean that we agree on everything. It doesn't mean that everything works. But actually, as an institution, it has achieved more with those rules than we would have internationally any country without them. New Zealand has benefited from mutually respectful relationships with all countries of the world, particularly when it comes to trade, and I think we are a beacon for what is possible. So we need to all continue to work hard in the WTO to fix the things that aren't working, the dispute settlement system, to make courageous decisions that are good for our citizens, that bring down barriers and build up our business and create higher paying jobs. It's not easy work, because if it was, it would have been done a long time ago. But with China, we've worked very closely in the WTO and with many others, and we remain committed to do so.
You attended the ministerial meeting of the WTO. You know this very well, the debate going on, especially about the dispute settlement mechanism. Now the priority is get those who have been proposed confirmed in order for the appellate body to work. Do you see an immediate possibility of that?
Well, we keep working towards that, and there is a growing consensus amongst the WTO. But it is important we take all countries with us, and because if we don't, then ultimately the system itself doesn't work as well as it should. That means sometimes we need to talk for longer than we might want to try and reach that consensus. But we also need to make decisions. If anything, the WTO sometimes can be too slow. Perhaps we leave it to our ambassadors in Geneva to do too much of the work when we need very clear direction from our ministers and from our leaders. But, the appellate body is only one of the aspects that we need to continue to work on the WTO. We need to find ways to bring down agricultural subsidies because they do harm trade around the world. There's a very big work agenda. We will have opportunities later this year and next year to work towards delivering upon those in the WTO.
Yeah. Having said that, though, Mr. Minister, you work also with the Chinese colleagues on bilateral agreement, as you said, the free trade agreement, and also China and New Zealand are certainly partners with RCEP in the region. Meanwhile, New Zealand is an active participant of CPTPP. As you know, China is also working on joining this mechanism. We don't know what the timeline will be, but how do you see this cooperation bilaterally in this multilateral mechanism?
Well, look, all of those arrangements, RCEP and the WTO and ASEAN and APEC are very important bodies. It brings countries together to be able to have the discussions, the debates that we need to about how we can, grow economies and move the world's economy forward. But underpinned with that is a bilateral relationship, and they're very important. When I go to those meetings, I have many more bilateral meetings than I would with others, and often with my Chinese counterparts. And so, we need to keep doing that. Throughout the Asia-Pacific, a rules-based approach that we can rely upon, where we bring those barriers down, is good for all of us.
Upcoming APEC Economic Leaders Meeting, well, at the same time on the sideline, APEC CEO Summit. I know you frequent there almost every year. So tell us more about what's your expectation?
Well, the business component of APEC is very, very interesting. It allows us to talk directly to businesses from the world, large and small, and have a better understanding of what they need us as decision makers to be considering and doing. After all, bringing down those barriers and making it easier for people to do business and trade with each other, grows economies.
Right.
The China-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement is a clear demonstration of that. And I mentioned earlier, 70 New Zealand businesses have come to the CIIE to further those relationships and rely upon them, something that some years ago we wouldn't have dreamed was possible. And so, the bilateral relationship is just as important as the multilateral one. In fact, if anything, it underpins it.
Now, there are issues of misunderstanding. There's also sometimes we see in the public sphere purposeful rhetorics to confuse the public about countries, relations, and also the future. As the minister yourself in charge of such a pillar of your industry and economy, how do you proceed and clarify for your public?
Well, I think it's about being very clear of mind and thought and having your priorities that are set clearly there, firstly. Secondly, open and clear dialogue. The New Zealand example is one where we engage directly with countries about the issues that are important for us, and we do so respectfully. As we look to parts of the world where those relationships are not as strong as they need to be, we would always advocate for a clear rules-based approach, the support of the WTO, but more than that, directed dialogue to find solutions to challenges and barriers that can be put in place. After all, there are few examples of where barriers are put up, economies grow, and people are better off. And that's why New Zealand at the forefront of this in the WTO with China and America and the European Union, the UK, Australia, many countries will keep advocating for that multilateral system that benefits the citizens of all of our countries.
Thank you so much.
Great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.